And let's see, we're live. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Carmen Rojas with the Rojas Consulting Group. I am here with some of my favorite branding people, and today we're going to be doing an in-depth look at branding, what it is, what it isn't, and how you can get better at it and improve your brand. I do want to just let everyone know Stephanie Sims is not able to be with us today. They've had a death in the family, so please keep them in your thoughts and prayers as they move through that period, and we will hope she will be joining us again next week. So what we do have for you, though, is my esteemed cast of film strip participants. And so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I would just encourage everyone to please start adding your comments into the stream if you've got anything. We do have another computer set up, so if it's a website we need to look at, just make sure you post the link so that we can pull up the site so everybody can see it. We will be taking your questions live and in living color. So if you're willing to share it, we're willing to talk about it. That goes for all of you over there on YouTube as well. You can post your comments also, and we can see them because comment tracker's working today. So, so we're going to go with it. So I'm going to go in alphabetical order, and so that means Christine, you will be up first to just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your area of expertise with branding.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Carmen and Stephanie, and hello to everyone watching. My name is Christine L. Bowen, and I am a creative consultant for entrepreneurs in the areas of personal branding, social networking, and healthy living. And so in terms of branding, oh my gosh, I'm going to date myself. I've been in the industry of graphic art and visual communication for over 25 years. So it's something that is a part of who I am. I absolutely love design, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me on.
I always forget to unmute myself. But thank you for coming on. Christine was on recently, and I just loved her so much we had to bring her back. So she's here now to talk more about the graphic art side, and we're going to also tap her brain when it comes to social branding and how that applies. So when we take our brand social, what happens and what should happen. So the next up, we're going to talk to Miss Gail Harris. So introduce yourself, please, and let us know something that we don't know already about you.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Carmen. I really appreciate it. I'm Gail Harris, everybody, and I am an author who specializes in writing books for other people. And I'm very excited because my latest book was just launched yesterday. It's really great to say. It is a memoir, thank you, entitled Finding Zoe that I co-wrote with a former Miss Deaf America named Brandy Raris. And it is her memoir and her story, and it is just an absolutely amazing story. Christine will be able to attest to that because she's actually read the book. So really exciting. And before I was an author, I was an advertising copywriter for many years. So I've had a lot of experience with branding products. And I'm looking forward to this wonderful conversation. And I will give the writer's point of view.
Sounds like a plan, ma'am. All right, and last but certainly not least, Ryan, you're up, sir. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're up to, and what we need to know about you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Rhoades. I am the founder of Reformation Designs, which is a website and multimedia company my wife and I founded in Silicon Valley in 2011. I currently live in Salem, Oregon, and I've been a graphic artist, designer, multimedia guy for about 15 years. I started out whenever I was a little kid and working with my aunt in her print shop. I was very fascinated by the concept of taking something from the digital world and then turning it into something that we could see and touch and handle and use as a printed marketing material or something like that. So right now I am actually in the process of finishing up my first two books. One's a book that I co-wrote with Lainey Sullivan. It's called Stop Wasting Time and Burning Money. It's all about productivity and getting things done. And the other one is currently untitled, but it is a collection of my writings and thoughts on creativity and entrepreneurship. And something that a lot of people don't know about me. I am an aspiring filmmaker slash actor, and I love doing voiceovers and funny voices and things like that. So glad to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I want to bring up just a quick comment. It seems like we have people already giving some shout outs out there. But Eva wants to make sure she says hello to everyone and wave hello to Christine and Gail and Ryan. So we'll all wave hello to her. Thank you for watching, Eva, and I hope if you have any questions or comments, make sure you let us know, and we will tackle them during the show. So let's get started talking about branding. And what I want to ask first, and for all three of your guys' perspectives, I guess, what makes the difference between a good brand and a bad brand? Let's go, Christine, you're up first.
Oh, thanks, Carmen.
You're welcome.
For me, the difference is a feeling. It needs to stir some kind of emotion that draws your target audience into that brand. So for me, that's what makes the difference between the two. It's something that people can respond to emotionally. I'll stop there. I want to plead the fifth until someone else takes the floor.
Okay. Gail, in your opinion, what makes the difference between a good brand and a bad brand?
Well, I certainly agree with what Christine says, but also a good brand is a brand that you have a good feeling about and you're interested, you want to buy the product. It's just kind of a no-brainer, but it has to appeal to you. It can't be emotional, but it gives you a negative emotion. It has to be a positive experience.
Cool. All right, it wouldn't turn off. Hey, so Ryan, that leaves you to be up, but I'm actually going to do a flip here and change the question. Ha-ha.
Oh, all right. I'm quick on my feet though, so let's go.
All right.
I'm not even standing up, so.
Okay, so let me ask you then to define what a brand is, because I think that that's a commonly misused and misunderstood term of what is a brand. What does it include? What does it not include? What is it?
For me, the way I understand brands and kind of the definition of it would basically be the personality of a company or a person. Like if you're trying to get yourself out there as a speaker or an author or something like that, you have to decide what personality, what attitude you're going to put out into the world. And that personality, the look of it, the feel of it, the sound of it, the colors, the typography, all of that kind of comes together to form what I would call your brand, using the terminology basically from whenever like ranchers would brand cattle so that people knew, hey, this is my livestock here. This is my mark. Your brand is the mark that you're leaving on the world. And that's why it's something that's so incredibly important. It's what people are going to associate with you as a person, and so that's why whenever you're driving down the freeway, you see those big golden arches, you immediately know that that's McDonald's. It doesn't say McDonald's, but they've spent so much time, energy, and money marketing that brand that they've really got that personality, that icon in your head, and that's pretty much what they're going for. So
I'm loving all of that. Ladies, anything else you want to add about what a brand is?
Sure. First, Ryan, I love what you just shared. I had to share it in the comment stream. Your brand is the mark you're leaving on the world. That is awesome. Because, yeah, you're welcome. And, yeah, you're my new best friend now. Yeah, because, in terms of personal branding, I think there's a big difference. A lot of entrepreneurs who need to brand themselves are looking at bigger business and how they brand, and to me it's a different process. So with personal branding, just like Ryan just said, it's allowing your true strengths, your true awesomeness to shine through and convey that, as he said, through your colors, your font choices, your language, and even in your conversation. So I'm totally on the same page.
Cool. Gail, and not to leave you out, anything else you want to add to that? You know, we're talking about what brands are.
Yeah, those were two very full explanations, but I think I would add just that a brand is it's that impression, that quick impression. You have a couple of seconds, you know, and then you leave that impression or that image. I think it's how you represent yourself, or how you're recognized in the world, and how you're known. So I would just sum it up in that way.
Well, and since Ryan kind of brought up the golden arches, let's talk about some specific brands. And I released a blog earlier this week, and I brought up the point. You know, the point of the blog was to talk about there seem to be kind of these perceived rules of branding, and we'll ask the question in a second whether or not you guys believe that there are necessarily rules to it, or are they more like, and I think I put it in there, is it more like Captain Jack says, there's no rules, it's just guidelines. When it comes to it. So, you know, one of the things that I put in there, and I was bringing it up on the other screen so people can see it, and they can't see it so well, but the point that I was saying was, you know, someone made a comment that branding needs to be more obvious and less obtuse, and so I went and I did kind of a search on Forbes and pulled up, they had like a list of the 200 most I think it was the 200 wealthiest brands or most valuable brands, I think is the way that one was phrased. And if you look at, you know, probably about the first 50 to 100 of them, they're not obtuse and they're not obvious. If you didn't know what they were, you know, if you didn't know that Golden Arches was McDonald's, it's not a hamburger. It's not, it doesn't even have anything to do with food. You know, it might as well be this, you know, the symbol of St. Louis. You know, I mean,
Sorry,
so
I had difficulty.
It happens, no worries. So I guess the question becomes, you know, and Christine made a point of what's going on with bigger brands may not necessarily be appropriate for entrepreneurs, but even the bigger brands had to start at an entrepreneur level somewhere. So at some point they made a decision to go against the grain, so to speak, and to be less obvious and obtuse. So throwing that out there for debate and discussion, you know, do brands have to be obvious to be successful?
I'll jump in here, and I would say no, but I say they have to work. You know, we have a strategy. There's a marketing strategy. You know, each business has their particular issues that they want to address, how they want to portray themselves to the people that they want to reach, and whatever the branding looks like, and whatever the words say, and the design is, it has to fulfill their marketing strategy. And other than that, you know, it's a creative process. It could affect a mood. It could have many, many words. It could have no words at all. It really depends on, you know, I mean, creativity is limitless in a sense. So I think as long as it gets the job done, it could be anything, really.
Yeah. If I can piggyback on that, I agree with Gail that it's something that's recognizable. It's not the logo in and of itself. I agree with you, Carmen. You know, you have McDonald's, you have Nike, which is just this crazy little tick mark, or they call it a swoosh, that means nothing. Apple is a little bit more literal with their Apple logo, but a brand is not just a logo, it is an experience that's created. So the biggest brands in the world, like McDonald's, it's not the best hamburger. Hello? I think we can all agree on that, but it is the best hamburger franchise in the world in terms of revenue. And it's because they have created an experience for families, and they target these little kids, you know, with Ronald and the Hamburglar and all these little criminals, and so it's something that the kids want to be a part of. So it's not just the logo, but over time with that experience, the logo becomes infamous or famous because they have the recognition. So my favorite brand, two of my favorite brands for big business is Apple and Starbucks. Those two brands have created such a phenomenal experience for their clients that you feel cool just being a part of it. So it's more than just the logo. So I'm with you, Carmen. I don't think they're rules. We just have to create a culture.
That's a good point. Well, and I wanted to ask a question since we kind of, again, talked about Apple. Is their brand backfiring possibly? I think I put out a couple of blogs lately because it seems like, and I'm sorry, this may be too soon, but since Steve Jobs has passed, it seems as though the expectation of the brand is starting to wane a bit. That, you know, the last two product releases have not been to the same caliber that I think the culture has expected out of Apple. You know, whether technically they're just as sound or not is pretty much irrelevant. You know, the customer base, because of what's happened with Samsung and the competition in that space, I really do feel like, you know, the brand, the expectation that is associated with Apple is that we're going to be blown away every time they put a product out, and I feel like they've kind of lost that a little bit.
I'll jump on this because I'm kind of an Apple fanboy.
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have to agree that my expectation of them as a brand has definitely dropped pretty intensely over the last several years, and especially whenever you see them doing things that a lot of other larger companies end up doing, which is basically going around and just acquiring other successful companies so that they can put it under their umbrella, basically buying innovation so that they don't have to innovate themselves. And that bothers me as a creative type in general. It's something where, you know, you come to expect something from that brand because of the quality of the products and the type of things that they were doing. I mean, the iPod, the iPhone, all these things, like, they were game changers. They completely changed the world. And now it's like, hey, look, we have a bigger iPhone. We have a bigger iPad. It's like, dude, you guys are doing exactly the same thing as everybody else. And that to me, unless there are some major changes, it's a really, really sad thing whenever that happens to a brand, because you realize how much of the company was tied to the founder. And I mean, that's such an important thing to really learn how to implement into the culture of your company, is how to infuse your personality and your vision for the company into the rest of the corporation, so that if and when you're not there anymore, your legacy still lives on. I mean, Tony Hsieh from Zappos has done a phenomenal job of doing that in his company, because you know, whenever you talk to a Zappos employee, that they are modeling the core values of Zappos. And with Apple recently, I don't know if you guys saw with their bigger iPhone, it's bending in people's pockets because they're wearing skinny jeans. I think skinny jeans are stupid. But first of all, don't put your giant phone in a pair of pants that's going to, like, hug to your body. But the fact that it's bending and it's that simple for it to break like that I don't think ever would have happened if Steve Jobs was still at the head of Apple. So.
Yeah, you got to kind of wonder if it would. But, you know, I agree with you. I think, and one of a different blog I wrote about that, and I'll post links to it, I was saying that, you know, one of the things as entrepreneurs that we have to be careful about is our brand perception as well. It's not just the brand that you put out, but it's the brand that's reflected back to you. And perhaps, you know, and Apple has some people that are making way more money than I am that I'm sure are working on this. But, but, you know, I think it speaks to the idea that you need to be aware of how people see you, not just what you put out. Anyone else want to jump in on the Apple conversation?
I'm an Apple junkie as well, and I totally am on the same page as Ryan, so I'm not going to repeat everything he said, because I would say exactly what he shared. In addition to that, for me, Steve Jobs, he's one of a kind. And the thing about that is, even when they had ousted him from Apple and they realized that they were losing traction and they pulled him back. What they should be focusing now is not on the me too of what other brands are doing and trying to, in quotes, keep up. They should be investing their time trying to find another Steve Jobs that has the innovation, has the creativity, has the vision that can drive the company beyond the expectation like it used to. So that's the mistake they're making. They're trying to play catch up and keep up with their technology instead of trying to focus on keeping that culture and not replacing Steve Jobs, but finding someone that has the vision and the innovation that he had.
I saw a blog yesterday, actually. A friend of mine sent it to me. It might have been on Forbes or something like that, that basically somebody was saying that for the kinds of things that Steve Jobs was doing for our world, they were equating Elon Musk to be the Steve Jobs of right now, from Tesla, because of the way that he's innovating and his vision for the future. I mean, he wants to colonize Mars. I mean, things like that, where it's like, you know, these are the kinds of things that I personally came to expect from companies like Apple, because they were always at the forefront of the new technology. They were always the ones that everyone else was trying to copy. And I mean, that's something that you're looking for as a brand if you're wanting to be successful, in the sense of, you know, everyone wants a piece of your product, everyone wants to share what it is that you're doing. You've got to be innovating instead of playing catch up, because otherwise you're basically treading water. So
there we go. You know, I'll ask Gail this question, and I think it happens also kind of in the writer author realm as well, where if you write one book and it's just awesome, that it kind of creates this expectation that every book thereafter is going to be a New York Times bestseller. So first question to Gail would be, is that accurate, that happens there too? That once maybe once you hit it out of the park, they expect every time you're at bat, you're going to hit another home run.
I think to an extent it is. I think that's just human nature. You know, like if a book or say a book, if it does really great, and then the author comes out with another book, if it's not as good, if the reader doesn't feel it's good, it's a letdown. I mean, I think it's just human nature that makes that so.
Yeah, I remember, you know, people don't probably know this about me, but I'm a huge Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson fan. That my whole childhood would be totally different. But, you know, it's so funny to me how when people knock Janet Jackson lately, you know, her last album only sold 10 million albums instead of the 100 million that she sold before. Oh my God, so what? 10 million instead, big deal. But again, it's the brand of being associated with the Jacksons, and that you are going to be this literal rock star every single time you put something out. And I think they've experienced that even with the Jackson children. That, you know, when they put music out, some of it's all right, but, you know, it's never going to be another Michael. But it's almost like that's the expectation that everybody is holding them to.
Well, yeah, you know, you bring up a good point, because when Steve Jobs passed away, the whole world, you know, was like, well, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen to Apple? And I think everybody was waiting to see what was going to happen to Apple. I'm actually an Apple girl myself. I haven't really been paying attention to the latest Apple products. I know that they have a phone that's bigger, and I thought that was interesting. Like, oh, it's sort of trying to be like Samsung now or something. But what I have noticed is I like looking at advertising campaigns, and I really like looking at I always like try to figure out, well, what's the strategy behind it. And I noticed that recently Apple had this campaign that came out, and I don't know if it was for what product it was for. I don't know if it was the iPhone or their computers. I don't remember, but I know that they were appealing to the creative person, to the creative type. I don't know, have any of you seen that campaign? They were showing, you know, musicians. Oh, was it for the iPad?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what it was? Yeah. And I was really struck by that. I don't know why. And maybe it was my own. Like I was just saying, like I was thinking, well, what's going to happen now? You know, now that Steve Jobs isn't here, and I found myself thinking, oh, I wonder why are they approaching creative people now? Are they, you know, you know, or things not going so well and they're trying to look for a certain niche because they have to. But, you know, it was like my own expectation, like, what's going to happen now? The whole world is watching them.
They had an ad campaign that I actually was not sure. I didn't get it at first. It was this one where they had all the people exercising, and I'm a bit of a fitness nut, and you know, it was they had that song "Run You Chicken Fat Run" going on in the background, and then you went to go and try it, and you're like, oh, that is so cool that I can do all of this stuff with my, you know, and you thought that there was an app that did all of that. And then, you know, like my husband and I were trying to find this app, and we were like, what? It's not in the Apple iStore. What the heck? And then it turned out that it was like a whole bunch of different apps that you could do on your iPhone. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not as cool. I'm kind of disappointed. Yeah, I could go find my own apps and put all of this stuff together. I wanted one app that did all of that. But that's what I expect from Apple.
Yeah, if I can jump in.
Sure.
One thing is, you were speaking about Michael and Janet. Just sold out on those two. And the thing about it is also we're thinking about brands that span generations. And generational, the socially mindset shifts. So Apple in the 80s is not the expectation that the younger generation has today when it comes to technology and brand expectation. You know, so again, just focusing on the fact that Apple, if they want to stay hip into the times, I have to shout out my buddy Frederick that shared on the comment stream. Yes, having a catchy, attractive logo or oversaturation of products makes it difficult to emerge in a sea of fish. And it makes me think of this quote. And hey, thanks for being here, by the way. That was shared with me in terms of personal branding, where Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead says, it's not enough to be the best at what you do. You must be perceived as the only one who does what you do. And that's what allows you to stand out. That's what allowed Apple to stand out. That's what allowed MJ to stand out, Michael Jackson and Janet. And so in taking it upon ourselves as entrepreneurs to create a unique brand, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but that's why personally, I believe we should focus on our own personal blueprint, who we are to the core, because there's nobody else like us. And if we can convey that brand of ourselves through visually with my buddy Ryan, textually with my girl Gail, and then all encompassing on social media with our approach, that's how we stand out online.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that for a second, you know, talking about Carmen, how you mentioned Janet only sold 10 million albums, you know, it's, I think, a huge aspect of the way things are going today, and even the problem that Apple is having and a lot of companies seem to be having, where it's like there were these giants in their industry because they had broken through this glass ceiling. They had gotten past all of the gatekeepers. But in the age that we live today, the gatekeepers are going away. Like, if you want to write a book, you don't have to get the permission of a publisher these days. If you want to record an album and you want to get your stuff out on iTunes, you don't have to go through the music industry. I mean, Macklemore is a prime example. He still to this day isn't with a major label. They do it all independently because they wanted the money to come to the artists instead of to people who are just good at marketing. And I think that that's something that a lot of the bigger brands and a lot of these industry giants who have gotten used to their fame and their prestige, they don't know how to handle it whenever all these supposed nobodies are showing up and doing the same types of things for less money in less time and with, you know, even potentially smaller communities of people that are helping them get there, because the technology and the options are available to us today that just 5 years ago weren't even there. I mean, you can self-publish a book on Amazon, print on demand for free, get, you know, an actual book in hand. You can get ebooks. I mean, there's stuff every day. I can write an entire book on my iPad. And these are the kinds of things that are totally changing the game and disrupting the way that people are perceiving, how to go about doing things. And I think that that's something that if you're a company or a brand that you're trying to get out there more and to stand out in that sea of fish, like Frederick mentioned, these are the kinds of things that you're going to have to consider and figure out how can you innovate, how can you stand out whenever there's no-name people on Amazon who overnight become an Amazon bestseller and have big-name publishers wanting to put them in Barnes & Noble and all this other stuff. I mean, there's so many more variables that people are dealing with today than they used to. So,
I'll jump in here. 2 points I'd like to say. One, I think that's why branding is so important right now, because everybody so many people are entrepreneurs, and the word branding itself, I mean, until even Google Plus, it's like this platform for entrepreneurs, and everybody's talking about branding. But 10 years ago, the only people that talked about branding were the big businesses. So now that's why branding is so important. And as an entrepreneur, so with a big company, one particular person isn't that brand. It's a company. Not one particular person is responsible for it. But now as an entrepreneur, we are our brand. It's that you represent that brand, and that brand, it has to be good, because a lot of other people are branding themselves as well. So that's one point. The other point, though, I just wanted to say is that, yes, anybody can go out and write a book right now, but there are a lot of crappy books that are being published on Amazon, and that is something that does need to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I totally agree.
Yeah, crappy books and crappy music. I just got to throw that in there.
Right.
Yeah, we've opened the floodgate, and sometimes you do get some crap that comes in with it. I agree. So let's talk a little bit drill down to specifics here. What do you guys think, and I guess I'll start with Gail on this one. When entrepreneurs first decide that they're going to start a business, they've got an idea, some passion that they want to turn into a profit, and they decide, okay, now I need to develop a brand. What do they need to do first, or can we prioritize, or is there necessarily a list, do this, do that, then do this, or is it what do we have to do to develop these good brands? You're on mute, Gail.
Sorry. Thank you. Well, so are you asking me what the person has to do specifically with their branding, assuming that they know what their business is, or they know what their product or service is, and they understand what their marketing strategy is? Like, where in the process are they, so I know how to kind of jump in to that question? Because you have to know who your market is, you have to know who you're speaking to, you have to have that, like what Christine was saying before, that authenticity of what makes you, or your product you, that's different than anything else that's there. Find that like unique selling proposition, as they used to say. And then when it comes to the branding, you have to figure out a way using graphics and words to express that. And there's so many possibilities. A lot of times, if you work with a creative team, they might come back to you with 3 different ways to go, or 3 different versions, and then you see, well, which feels the best to you, that one feels really right. There's a lot that goes into it. So I hope that begins the conversation anyway.
Well, and I think you make a good point of trying to understand a little bit more about maybe where we're starting from. And I think perhaps errantly, where it often seems to happen this way, is where someone says, I want to be an entrepreneur, I've got this $1 million idea on the world's greatest brownie, or whatever, some recipe that they have that they're now going to turn into a huge business. And maybe they've saved up a little something, and they're ready to take the leap and jump into being an entrepreneur. And so they say, okay, now I think I need a website. I need logos, I need a website. So I need to talk to somebody about branding. And so then they go out and they talk to people. They may call me, they may call Ryan, they may call Christine, they may call, all these other companies, find out, how much we may or may not charge, sometimes get discouraged with that and say, I'll just do it in, some other system. I'll do a DIY or I'll do something else. And then they end up with, at the end of the day, what I think is probably a pretty crappy brand. Well, at least their visual doesn't accurately represent who they really could have been.
Well, you know what? Let me just jump in for a second, because when I heard what you were just saying about that particular person, this particular example, I didn't really hear you say that they had really defined their product and they knew exactly what it was and they knew what their marketing strategy was, who their customers were, who they have to reach. You can't, if you go and start to create a brand before you have all that information, it's just not going to work.
Right, and that's, I think, what I was trying to get at, was what are some of the steps that we need to take before we even go, before you even talk to a Ryan or a Carmen or a Christine. And what you just brought up is doing, your own market research, and having a very clear picture of who you are and what it is that you are bringing into the market. And Ryan, what do you think? What is in your, what drives you nuts when people come to you and say, hey, I want this to work, go for it?
Stop using the font Papyrus and stop using Comic Sans. They don't look good. So that's one. But beyond all of that, and all joking aside, I'm not joking about that. Stop using them. I am joking. Simon Sinek wrote a phenomenal book. It's called Start With Why. And if you haven't read it, I cannot recommend you pick it up enough. And if you don't like reading, you just type in Start With Why on YouTube, and he's got a bunch of TED Talks. He talks about it. A lot of companies, whenever they're just starting out, or people that they're just starting out, they'll have an idea of what they want to do. And they'll start with that. They'll start with their what. It's like, oh, I want to create a new litter box that stops getting cat litter all over the floor, or whatever. They'll start with their what and then try to figure out their how, and like how they're going to go about doing it. And then, maybe eventually you'll hear, oh, well, this is why I started. Simon, on the flip side, says that some of the really great companies like Apple and Starbucks and things like that, that really have gotten a foothold on culture and have become like common household names, he says that they start with why and then move out from there. And so my biggest suggestion whenever I'm working with a new client, and someone comes to me and says, hey Ryan, I want a logo for my company, I want a website or whatever, one of the first questions I ask them is, well, why are you doing what you're doing? And it kind of blows my mind how few people can actually answer that question, because they don't even really know why. I mean, a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's because I want to make money. Well, that's okay, but I don't think that trying to make money is a cause that is going to sustain you in the long run. Because I've seen a lot of people start out and they're just in it for the money and they burn out quick. Because as entrepreneurs, anyone watching this knows, you will have ups and downs, and you will have a lot of downs before you get any ups. And so my biggest suggestion is figure out why you're doing what you're doing. Why is it that you want to write a book? Why is it that you want to have a blog or whatever? And kind of move out from there. Do some market research. Talk to people who you can trust to speak into your life the kind of wisdom that you might need to hear. Even if you have this idea and you think it's a great idea and you bring it to a bunch of trusted friends and mentors, if they have questions, allow them to question your reasons, and it'll help you refine what it is that you're doing, so that whenever you do come to somebody needing graphic design work or needing a copywriter or needing whatever, you'll have more substance to present to that service provider, so that they have something to work with and help you bring your ideas to life and kind of add flesh to those ideas. I think that your why has to be the foundation of what it is that you're doing if you want it to be sustainable in the long run. You're muted, Carmen.
There we go. How about now?
That's good.
There we go. Sorry about that. It's like I'm trying to click on it and it keeps going away. I'm like, no, no, no. But anyways, those are some excellent points. And William Rock was so kind to put up a link in the event room to Simon Sinek. It's a little bit too long to show here, but for those of you watching, and I definitely, he's one that I had not heard of. I must admit. So I'll definitely be pulling him up and watching him as I start working on some projects. And I also wanted to mention Miss Gail Laura has a comment for Gail that she just thought that was a really great point in being able to research and understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I think that really dovetails nicely into Ryan's point that, too many people come thinking that if we just make money, then that's how it all works. And I'm like, not so much. Leaving your ego at the door, I think that's another really good point. I could get on a whole soapbox on that one, so I think I'm going to move on before we do that. Let's see, other comments. Kim Armstrong is out in the audience right now. Hi, Kim. And we also have comments coming. Frederick is also stating that he started with the why and the what when he created his products. And I think that is such an excellent point. I mean, if you get nothing else from this this show, then I definitely think walking away with that, understanding the why, is really going to be the key takeaway point that among the many that I would recommend. And Sabrina, I think it must all start with passion first, and I think that's an excellent point as well. That having passion and having a purpose in what you're doing, and really, because like Ryan said, entrepreneurship is hard. It's got way more downs than it has ups at the beginning, and if you're not passionate about it, it's too easy to walk away from it and let it go. So I definitely would agree with that. Now, I wanted to bring on Gail because I know that she has some examples of some specific scenarios that she wanted to talk about. So as we kind of move from this topic into this one, I've got a couple of things to pull up here and let Gail explain to us some of the points she wanted to make. So.
Are you gonna, okay, so there was the infusion principle that they just started a new brand, a new company, and I just thought we can take a look at it because it was such a great example of branding. They have their logo, and I have some notes here that Nora, that Jess Jewell gave me, and she was saying that, okay, so the IP logo is really a path, and on that, and in the path is a triangle, and that would be whoever you are. And the circle at the top is the potential, and that represents your relationship that you have with the infusion principle. And then they have an equation there, that their equation is part of their logo. That, like, I know they say 2 + 3 = par. And I remember seeing that, and I was thinking, what the heck are they talking about, But I was very intrigued. I was really, even though I didn't quite understand it, I thought it was really good branding because I wanted to understand more. And it was also very friendly and smart, And so what they're saying about the 2 + 3 = par, they're saying that that the infusion principle is going to be something different for each person. 2 and 3 may be par for you, and it may be bow wow for somebody else. And I think this is my own interpretation, and they would have to say it, but I think what they're trying to say is that when you work with them, they will help you to determine, exactly what your needs are and help you to, manifest your business to the greatest. And I just thought, I know they're my friends, but I just thought that they did such an excellent job with the branding. So I wanted to mention that. And then I also thought I would just take an opportunity to just mention my new book that just actually was launched yesterday called Finding Zoe. I think that my publisher, Ben Bella Books, did a really good job with the branding of the cover. Very briefly, Finding Zoe is a memoir. It's Brandy Raris's memoir. She is my co-author, and she is a deaf woman and a former Miss Deaf America, and the story is about her journey to self-acceptance and also to finding her daughter, who she adopted, who's also deaf, and she had searched her whole life. She had always had a yearning for a daughter, and she searched her whole life to find a daughter. So my publisher, Benbella Books, came up with 3 different cover options, and that was part of the process. And one of them didn't really stand out very much. It was just kind of ordinary. Excuse me. Then there was another cover that was very emotional. It made you feel really good. We all liked it. It just showed a picture of a woman holding her child on her shoulders. It was like from behind. It was a very beautiful, beautiful yellow cover, and it was like really nice. But the cover that really won out and that they came up with, and I'm gonna hold it up now. Let me know if I'm showing it in the screen okay. But it's just really intriguing if you can see it. Let's see. It shows little shoes on the bottom, finding Zoe, and also Brandy is deaf, so it has a deaf sign for Z. That is the hand sign for Z, and it shows the little shoes on the bottom, where Zoe was. Brandy finally found her, and it was just, I thought, a great branding for the book. I think they did a really good job.
Well, if I could, let's jump back to Infusion Principle real quick, because I was looking at this while we were talking about it, and this is, I think, a really neat, branding and brand identity that they've created for this. I love the IP over here. Like, it's really cool because when I was looking at it, I didn't even realize it was an I and a P. But then when you mentioned it, I was like, oh, hey, that's really cool. I love that. That's really neat. The way it's not in your face, that it just kind of, it warms up on you, and then you go, oh, okay. And then the little arrow with I got it. So, what do you? I mean, and I don't want to, knock them or anything like that. But and I did send a message to Jessica to see if she wanted to come on and talk about her design here. But anything else that you guys wanted to add about this particular one from for Christine or Ryan?
I would. I love that Gail brought up Infusion Principle for this topic, because for me, the brand extended beyond just what you're looking at there. That to me is the visual, and both Jess and Nora have done a phenomenal job with creating a culture behind Infusion Principle. And so for me, that's what personally draws me to them. And what I like especially about their brand is the little raccoon part. Having a little, not saying that now you must go run out and have a mascot, because I don't have one, but I do like that they incorporated the little raccoon, because it suits their personalities. You see, Jess and Nora are people that they love to have fun and infuse that into everything that they do. And notice I use the word infuse. So the Infusion Principle was by design, based on their core, as well as the humor with Parpar is part of their personality and their core. So I love that it has an all-encompassing representation. It's beautiful visually, but it also represents who they are and what they bring to the table.
Well, I wanted to ask Ryan a question. When it comes to the idea of having a character, you know what I mean? What are your thoughts? Obviously that's not right for every business to have some kind of a character, and I think is it Geico that technically has a couple that sometimes could be confusing, but it's working for them. They've got the little lizard, and they've got a couple other things going on. So the idea of having a character that's associated with your brand, you want to speak to that for a minute, and maybe some do's and don'ts, or how to know necessarily if it's a good idea for your business?
Sure. Just a quick question. Did my lower third just randomly disappear?
Sure did.
All right, fantastic. The reason I asked is because I had a little character that I've actually been kind of testing out on the screen here. Let me see if I can pull one up just so I can speak to that a little bit. But yeah, I think that as it pertains to mascots, character design, stuff like that, it really just kind of boils down to what you want to communicate about your brand. I think that companies that are wanting to communicate that they're friendly, companies that want to communicate that they're fun, that they don't take themselves too seriously, but that they're there trying to communicate a message with their mascot. I mean, I think whenever you're using little mascots, characters, things like that, you're mainly communicating that they're approachable. And you think of sports teams and things like that. People go crazy whenever the mascots come out during halftime and are always goofing around. There's always that element of lightheartedness and playfulness that is communicated for the most part when you're using characters like that. And I think that Jess and Nora, I think that that's very much in line with their personality, so I think it works for them just fine. The big thing about using characters like that, at least in my mind, as it pertains to branding, and the same goes with like your logo and things like that, you just have to keep using it before it finally will catch on. Whenever it's been interesting watching Jess and Nora kind of shape this thing, because I've been kind of watching from the sidelines since they started, and it started out with just like pictures of the two of them, sharing quotes and things like that, and now it's kind of evolving into more of a cohesive brand, and I really like what they're doing with it. And just recently, actually, my wife and I started. I'm going to see if I can. Carmen, would you actually be able to bring up my website? I'm having a hard time doing it here.
What is it? What's the address?
It's just reformationdesigns.com. I just recently, within the last, I don't know, probably month and a half or so, I created graphical representations of my wife and I, because we're the ones that run our company, and I've been using it in a lot of our marketing materials, so you can see it there on the screen if you blue box it or whatever. But basically, I started doing that. I started putting it on ads we were posting online. I started putting it on different printed materials like that, and it's been interesting the response that I've been getting, because whenever I first started my company, I was communicating a lot that, like, oh, we're edgy, we're intense, we do big bold colors and things like that, and it appealed to a certain demographic. But recently I've been just kind of changing gears a bit and wanting to reach a more broad audience, and so I started going with this cartoony character thing, and I really wish that my lower third was working, because I really liked what I did this morning. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what it boils down to. It just depends on what you want to communicate.
Mm-hmm. Now, here's kind of an interesting question that relates to this. Can a brand kind of help balance you out? So, we talked about brands needing to be representative of who you are. So, for example, myself, I personally I'm sorry, I'm not a silly cartoon. You know what I mean? That just wouldn't be a good, in my mind, representation of who I am. But it balances the fact that I can be very, kind of analytical and not so fun. So if it balances me and brings me more towards the midline to have something that maybe isn't, directly representation of who I am, could that help? I guess that's my question, is doing something perhaps that is opposite of what you are in your brand help bring you back to the midline and make you more approachable?
Well, for me, I know that it has helped me. People who know me personally, one of the words that a lot of my friends use to describe me is the word intense, because I can be very intense. Whenever I believe in something, I will just go all in with it. My wife is pretty much my polar opposite in terms of personality style, and so she has helped bring me back to that midline. And one of the reasons why we started going the route of doing the little mascot cartoony thing was because we wanted to try and communicate that that we were more approachable and things like that. And so that was pretty much why we ended up doing it. And I think that it really has helped me. I didn't want to do it at first. It was something where I was like, oh, you know, I don't know if I want to communicate this with these little cartoon characters or whatever. But because I don't really have anything to lose by trying, I decided to give it a go. And I think that that's one of the big things about being an entrepreneur is that you have to be willing to test new things and just see what happens and see how people like it, see how people respond, and then kind of go from there. So,
Gail, I think you were about to add a point.
Well, I was going to say that you have to be able to live with it as well. I think, you know, with the question that you asked, I think, you know, if it's on strategy, if it's what you want to, if it's the message that you want to give to the people, you know, to your audience, your potential audience, and even if you maybe feel a little uncomfortable with it a little bit, you know, what does your gut say? I mean, you know, authentically, do you feel that it really works for you? I'm not saying are you 100% comfortable with it, but can you live with it? Do you feel that it works? I think it comes down to trusting your gut on it, as long as it does the job.
Right, and here's another website of somebody that we all probably have seen before, and that's Rebecca Is it Rhoades? Am I saying that correctly? You know, and it's neat. I like this particular website. You know, when you first open it, so you don't, you know, you see, there it is, just her face, and then as you start, you know, scrolling down, and now you're engaging with the site because you're moving through it. Now this friendly person in the form of a character comes out, you know, and the placement in relation to the work with me, because this is friendly. This is not intense. This is inviting, and it's cute, and I'm, you know, why would I not want to engage with cute and friendly? You know, and in other strategic places, she has, you know, kind of a mix of it. And again, this is a website. This is part of the brand and an important part of the brand, but not the entire brand. I understand that. I did want to mention we are moving close to 3 o'clock. We did say we would end by then, but it seems like everybody is going to stick around. So those of you in the audience, you don't have to leave. We're going to keep the conversation going. We're going to ride this till the wheels fall off. That works for everybody. I'm game if you guys are. So
I can stick around for another 15 minutes or so before I have to head up. So.
Okay, I'm good with that. Yeah, my older son will be home by then, so yeah, it'll get noisy real quick when when he shows up. So let's go back to one of the things we haven't talked about. We've kind of talked about logos. We've talked about all that stuff, and I want to talk about content and how we can extend our brands into the content of for our businesses, and that I want to talk with Gail a little bit about that. And so let's first kind of do a how. You know, how do we extend our brand into the content, into the text and the words that we use, not just in slogan, and we will talk about slogans here in a second, but even into things like blog posts and the text on your website and copywriting. How do we extend into that with our brand?
Well, the writing, very simply, the writing has to reflect what it is that you want to say. It has to, you know, given that, it has to flow easily. It has to be easy to read. It has to have a certain je ne sais quoi about it. It has to be catchy. You want your headline to be catchy, and you want it to grab people's attention. I also want to say I'm not going to be able to stick around too much longer, so anything else you want to ask me, shoot. Sorry, I just have another appointment.
No worries, I totally understand. So if you got to go, I'll tell you what. Why don't we, let us know more about where we can find you and finding Zoe, and what we can, so we'll take that break right now, and then so you can hop off.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate that. Yeah, you can find me at gailharrisauthor.com. And as I said, Finding Zoe was launched yesterday. It's available wherever books are sold and online on Amazon.com, at BenbellaBooks.com, and check it out. It is truly an amazing story. And I also want to say that actually Brandy Raris and myself, Brandy is my co-author, and it's her memoir. We will actually be on CLB Live this Saturday morning with Christine Bowen, and we're really excited about it. Brandy's going to actually be there with her sign language interpreter, and I think it's a first ever done on a Google Hangout. So it's really a landmark show, and really looking forward to it and to being with Christine. So thanks for allowing me to share that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Gail. I really appreciate you being here. And we definitely will be watching for more with Finding Zoe and more from Gail. So I certainly appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much. Great to be with you guys.
All right. Take care, Gail.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So, sorry, back into the fray. Now, there's a couple of questions from the audience, and then we'll get back into content. And particularly, I want to spend some time talking about social media as well. But we have a few questions. Laura, who I think she said she has to run, was making the comment. Hold on, why is that still showing up on my screen? Do you believe that there is value in rebranding if a brand has been around for a while? Or do you think it's best to stick with the original? And I know Ryan had a comment, but I wanted to throw this out here and see what people thought of the idea of rebranding. Go ahead, Christine.
It's case dependent. I agree with Ryan. He said earlier that we should feel free and flexible enough to try different things on for size. Like he moved from a more serious type of a brand to a little bit more fun and approachable with the little caricatures, which are awesome, by the way. But it depends. Like we were speaking about Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson and the generation Apple. Each generation has a different expectation and feel from the brands that they buy into. So one of the brand faux pas that I can think of is the Gap. When they tried to change their brand, it was this huge uproar. What happened to the plain old navy and white logo? So, but they quickly reformed from that. Not to use your title there, Ryan. They quickly reformed and said, okay, we're going to go back to something that the audience likes. And how do we relate that to us as entrepreneurs? I think it's important to market as our audience and not to our audience. So yes, we should feel connected to our brand. It should represent us and all of that fluffy good stuff. But we also need to know what our brand perception is. So we should take our audience into consideration with development of the brand, which is personally the route that I've chosen. I've been building my brand for 4.5 years, and I do brand assessments with my audience to see, are they seeing what I'm conveying, or is it all in my head? And I think someone mentioned earlier about ego. You have to be able to check your ego at the door and really have an all-encompassing approach to your brand identity.
Yeah, I actually just did a quick search because I didn't remember the rebranding that the Gap did, and then I saw the logo, and I was like, oh, I remember hating that terribly. and apparently it's estimated that rebrand and the failure of it ended up costing them around $100 million. And that's the thing. It's like you have to understand, I mean, especially if you're a new company and you're just getting started and you're not like this household name all over the world, you have a lot more room to play around. You have a lot more room to make mistakes and kind of find your niche and find that branding that is really going to communicate who you are. Because whenever you hit that big time, whenever you hit the level of like an Apple or the Gap or Holiday Inn or whatever, then no matter what you do, you're going to have people hate the decisions you're making because you're messing with something that they have come to expect and enjoy and love and whatever. And so, I mean, I was just thinking like of the firestorm that Apple would see if they tried to change their logo right now. I mean, it would be a disaster, and I think that they know that, so they don't mess with things that are working for them. And so that would be my biggest suggestion. If you're in a position where you're considering changing the look and feel of your company, I would strongly discourage you from doing that if it's working for you. If it's not working for you, then yeah, sure, change some things around and give Christine or I a call, and we can help you out. And certainly talk with experts and people who know what they're doing in these arenas, because you're going to need a perspective that's outside your own head. And I think Carmen can agree that especially whenever you're in a consulting type business, people will come to you and they'll have these ideas and they're so set on them in their mind, and I'm guilty of it just like everybody else. And whenever it can kind of blind you from other options that might actually be better for you. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I want to take just a quick second here and look at a brand that I think has gotten a lot of attention lately for a rebrand that they did, and that's the Olive Garden. They dropped the logo that they had and have now adopted this new one. I'm not. Again, I don't know if even we're supposed to be showing this, but hey, it's on the internet, so I don't see why we get in trouble. But
freedom of speech and all of that, right?
Yeah, we'll see. That's what the lawyer's for. So, I'm just curious for you guys, and I'll share my opinion. I'll be the first one to step out there. Does this brand work? Is it working for them? And as I ask that question, I'll go ahead and say I think it may be perhaps a little too early to tell. But I have to be honest with you. I liked the other one better in terms of the actual look of the logo. In looking at their website, because that's kind of what I do, it seems to me that they're really trying, they've got kids in the pictures and families and things like that, so they're really trying to make it more of it seems like they're moving away from the fine dining experience and closer to more of a family-friendly type of a brand experience, which is fine, for them to try and make that move. But I'm just not so sure with, maybe it's the font that bothers me or the color choice. It kind of reminds me of like Thin Mints, the box for them. I don't know. It's just not it doesn't work for me, but I ate there not that long ago. So is it going to change their cash flows? Maybe, probably not. Are people going to say, oh my God, it's brown, I'm not going to eat there anymore? I doubt it. What do you guys think? Is this a win or a near miss?
For me,
pretty big miss.
Right. For me, it's a miss. But I go back to what Ryan mentioned earlier with Simon Sinek. It really depends on their why. Why are they updating their logo? And if their reason is to attract that type of a clientele, and it's working for that clientele, then they could probably care less about what we think right here on this HOA. But so if their reason for doing it is working for them and they find that they're having success with that, go for it. But in the case like I brought up with the Gap, or I thought of Tropicana too as I was going through the Google search, they had a huge lashback with their rebranding of their orange juice box. And, sometimes you make missteps, whether you're in big business or small business. So if you make a misstep, make a course correction and keep it moving. Sometimes it can be devastating, but, Tropicana is still there, Gap's still there, and I think Olive Garden will stick around too, because I like their soup and breadstick and salad.
Heck yeah, we went the other day. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I think a big part of it too is, like in the case with Tropicana, whenever you're going to make a rebrand like that for something like a product that you're going to find in the grocery store, you have to seriously consider the fact that a lot of people, if they really like or something, they're going to go to the section in the store where they're used to seeing certain colors. They're on autopilot in their brain. And when they go to reach for that thing and it looks entirely different than what they've been used to for who knows how long, there's going to be this moment of, oh, that's not the juice I like. Where's the juice I like? And they might not think beyond like, oh, well, they just changed their logo. It's the same stuff inside. Whereas with something like the Olive Garden, I mean, if you know where the local Olive Garden is, you're not going to go there and see that the sign has changed and be like, oh, it's not the Olive Garden anymore. It'll be more of a, I think, an easy transition as opposed to something like a product that's going to be on a shelf somewhere. Whereas like with the Olive Garden, whenever it was up on your computer there, Carmen, I saw that they had an alternative logo that they showed on a bag that had that it didn't have the brown background with like the white text. I like that one better like the one that's on the website up at the top left corner that has the brown background, it kind of just looks out of place. Whereas if it was just something that, had, I'm trying to see here.
Hold on.
Yeah, I think it changes. But basically, if you're going to be making those kind of big changes, yeah, right there on the bag, I think that works like that because it's not right up. It's not so dramatically different. It kind of blends into the background. And if you're going to want to communicate this family feel, where we've got the whole family here and everybody likes eating here, you don't want to feel like there's a branding expert just sitting on the table like, hi, I'm here too. You want the logo to kind of blend into the background. So
pass the breadstick.
Yeah, pass the breadsticks, exactly. You're making me hungry. It's lunchtime. So
I know. And Christine, I'm sorry, I know you wanted to talk about Simon T. Bailey and his branding, and I can pull up this website. So what do we want to look at here?
Well, yeah, thanks for bringing him up. Simon is a wonderful friend of mine and a mentor, one of my creative mindset mentors. And what I like about his approach to branding is it doesn't stop at look and feel, which is, I think, something that we were touching on before Gail had to step away. His whole, not just his logo, because he recently did a rebrand in 2013, and I was involved in the project, not on the website, but with his printed media. And so he went through a rebrand, not just with colors, but also with verbiage. So brilliance is his signature. And when he's creating either tweets or Facebook messages, which is where he frequents the most, he's using those keywords that are in alignment with his brand message within those posts and tweets. So you start to identify yourself not just with the look and feel, now you're carrying over that brand into your message and how you communicate with people. So that's what I love about Simon. He has an all-encompassing approach to his personal branding and his brand presence.
That's great, and I don't want to keep going too much longer. So unless there's anything else, that we really haven't covered. I mean, there's so much that we haven't covered. I mean, it's ambitious to try and do branding all in one show. I think that could be its own HOA all in itself.
There are like 5-day conferences on this stuff.
Yeah, and they're long, and there's a lot of drinking at the end of every night.
They're expensive. They're expensive too.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we have hit some really important points, and at the very least, I'm hoping that entrepreneurs will walk away from this with a greater respect for making branding decisions. If you recognize that you need a brand, that's great. But do some work, do some research. Fill it in. Don't. No offense to anybody on Fiverr. I like Fiverr too, but don't just go find somebody and say, "Hey, can you make me a brand?" That it's not going to work out well for you in the long run.
Stop, please stop.
Because you just give fodder for me and Ryan to have hangouts and laugh and go, "Oh my God, did you see this?" So real quick, let's see. Anybody? Shout outs to anybody else that I think we got most of them. Art, faux design, and painting incorporated. I think Ryan, you did their logo. Is that what they're saying out here?
Oh yeah, somebody had. I think it was William had asked, or no, somebody else. Let me see here. Tim Longwell had asked if an oil paint artist needed a logo or something like that, and so I had recently finished a logo for another artist, and so I just brought him in on the conversation. I thought.
Cool. Well, Christine, where can we find you? I know you're often on Google+, but where else can we find you, connect with you, and get the full Christine experience?
Ooh, do you all want the full Christine experience? You can find me at christinelbowen.com, and I'm pretty much hanging out on Google+, pun intended, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Those are my mainstays, but I'm also on LinkedIn. But all of my profiles are on christinelbowen.com. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And Ryan, where else can we find you besides on my show today?
I'm pretty much all over the internet. I don't necessarily like how large my internet footprint is, but you can find me at reformationdesigns.com. That's my business homepage. You can find my personal blog at ryanjrhoades.com. I don't update that one as much. And I've been spending actually a good bit more time on Twitter lately. I think I finally have figured out how it works after about 2 years. So you can find me on there at Reform Designs. But if you just go to reformationdesigns.com, all my profiles and stuff are on there also. And again, thanks for having me. And just as a heads up to anybody watching, percent referral bonus back to anyone who sends business my way once the deals are closed down. So if you know anybody who needs design work, things like that, you can let them know, that that's what I do, and I'd be happy to send you 10%. And if you also see this show and would like a 10% discount, just mention the show, and we'll do that too. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, and I just want to wrap this up and let everybody know that we have now officially X'd out branding for this particular series. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I hope that everybody will share this with the entrepreneur in your life that's considering starting a business or growing a business so that they can make good branding decisions, because that's what we all want, is for people to make good branding decisions. Next week, we are going to be joined, I believe, by Ammon Johns. Have to check my schedule, but I'm pretty sure he will be joining us next week, and we will be talking about website design. So now we've talked about logos, we talked about branding. We have had to talk about strategy with Susan Watson at the beginning. So now we're going to move more into website design do's and don'ts, and don't ever even think about it with Ammon Johns.
Papyrus, just stop.
I've had someone complain that they didn't have enough choices in Google Fonts for their website. I was just amazed that they felt that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It blows
So
my
anyway.
mind too.
All right then. So
The
join us
struggle is
next
real.
week to talk with Ammon, and we will be learning, like I said, the do's and don'ts, and don't even think about it with websites. So hope you'll join me then. We'll be getting that invitation out. Again, please keep Stephanie Sims and her family in your prayers and thoughts this week as they deal with the death of a family member. So we'll see you next week, and we'll look forward to more great conversations with more awesome guests. Have a good day.